So what we're going to do is we're going to go see a patient in an emergency department room, an exam room. You're going to see on a monitor some vital signs, and the patient will be there. It's a live simulated patient, an actual actor. You're going to treat this person as an actual patient, but it's just the verbal exam. It's nothing. It's not a physical exam. What happens in the room is confidential, so please don't share it with anybody. And of course, there's going to be limitations because this is a simulated situation, but overall should be pretty close to a real interaction and what you were expected to get from the history for the patient. You shouldn't need any sort of supplies, but if you do need any help, just ask for help. There's no simulator involved, so no technology involved. This is just going to be, again, with a patient who's acting. For this scenario, your patient is a 32-year-old female named Rashida. She's coming to the ED with stating that she's been attacked, and then that's all the information that we have. So what we're going to do is we're going to have two people do the verbal exam, so whoever wants to play a resident and a nurse, and then the third person will be in charge of documentation, so whoever wants to pick whatever roles.
I'll document.
Okay.
I can be the resident.
All right.
I'll be the nurse.
All right, excellent. So you two will approach the patient and get all the relevant information. You're expected to get any relevant medical information and then explain to the patient what needs to happen next. So any tests that need to be run or anything like that. So
Would that also include exam that we would need to explain to them
explain
exam
what
that
the-
would
yeah,
need to be done?
exactly. That's yeah. All right. So we'll go. We're gonna get our other room set up, and then we'll bring you right in.
All right. Hello. Hi, is this Rashida?
No.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I'm Dr. Fuchs. I'm one of the residents here in the emergency department. Would you like to tell me how you'd like to be addressed?
Rashad.
Rashad. Okay. Hi there, Rashad. Sorry about that earlier. But why don't you tell me what brings you into the emergency department today?
I got sexually assaulted.
You were sexually assaulted?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that's a very sensitive topic too, and but do you mind telling me a little bit more about that?
I was at the bar. I was with my friends, and the bar was closing, and I was gonna go home, and I was waiting on my Uber, and it dinged, that it was here, and so I went to the car, and I asked him if it was my Uber, and he said yes. So I got in, and he didn't. What I thought was weird, he didn't ask me the address. And he was driving around, and he said to me, "Do you mind if I go to somebody's house?" I can't remember. And I said, "No, I just want to go home. That's a weird question." And then, so I was just over it, and I was drunk. So we went to whatever house, I don't know where we were at. And then he came back, and then he started touching up on me. And it was like, I just want to go home. I just want to go home. And then I blacked out. And I came to again, and he was on top of me. And then I tried to fight him off, but then he punched me in my face. And then I woke up in this car, and my pants were down, and I just wanted to go home.
That sounds very awful. I mean, it must be hard to tell me that, but I appreciate you sharing those details with me. Certainly if you're coming to the emergency department, we want to check you out and make sure that you're okay, and make sure that we take the best care of you here. Again, very sorry that happened to you. Was that last night, you said?
Yeah.
That happened? Okay. All right. So, Are you currently having any pain or?
My head hurts.
Mm-hmm.
My hands hurt. And my abdominal hurts right here.
Okay. It hurts kind of in your groin there too. Okay. So after this incident happened last night, did you go home after that too, or did you come straight to the hospital? Or
I talked to my friend, and she said that I should come here.
Mhm.
So she brought me here.
Okay. All right. Yeah, so we definitely want to kind of address a number of those things too, and especially with things like sexual assault, it can get a little uncomfortable sometimes, just given the nature of it. But we want to try and make it as least uncomfortable as we can, and make sure we do like a good exam and make sure that we are thorough in like what we talk about, so that we don't miss anything and we can really help you out the best we can. Okay. So certainly, if you're having pains in your head, in your chest and your groin, in your arms, we want to take a good look at that and make sure there's no injury there, or if there is, we can take care of that the best we can. I mean, it sounds like it's been a very hard experience for you too. How have you been doing, like, I guess mentally since this took place last night?
I just wish it would go away. Just want to go home.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm glad your friend kind of told you to come in here today. I certainly appreciate that you want to go home, but again, we don't want to miss any big injuries or other concerns that we might otherwise miss if you did go home. So I appreciate you being very open and sharing those details with me here.
Rashad, I'm Emily. I'm going to be your nurse. It's nice to meet you. The one question that we ask people when they come in after any kind of an assault, have you talked to the police or do you want to?
No.
You don't want to? No. That's fair enough. A lot of people don't because it can feel pretty fruitless. So we completely respect that decision.
Okay. So what are your biggest concerns right now too? I know you were saying you wanted to kind of just go home and kind of be over it a little bit too, but what are the main things you're worried about here that we can help you out with and investigate?
I'm worried about I might be pregnant. And my head really hurts. So I want to get that checked, but...
Okay. Yeah, very reasonable to certainly check those things out too. And based on the concerns that you might be pregnant as well too, again, I guess we kind of wanted to determine a little bit too, just because of this assault took place too, maybe ask you a little bit more about your anatomy too, just to check that out. So can you tell me a little bit, I know when we first came in here too, I addressed you incorrectly. Can you tell me a little bit more about like kind of how you perceive your gender and how that affects you?
What do you mean?
Just if you identify as transgender or anything like that, just to help me kind of understand how you perceive yourself.
I'm a transgender male.
Transgender male. Okay. All right. And maybe you could tell me a little bit more about any of the, I guess, the female organs that you have, because I know you were mentioning there's some concern about pregnancy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I still have what I was born with.
Okay. So you were born as a female, so you still have like the uterus and all of the female organs. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Well, we can certainly take a look at that too, and make sure to address your concerns of pregnancy as well. So we can do that. I think moving forward here, we can do a good thorough exam, and including from the head down, and just kind of just talking about things we can do for you too. Again, we want to make sure you don't have any major head injuries, and kind of entailed in that too. We do a good neuro exam, check how your head's doing, listen to your chest and lungs, make sure that's all okay too. And with the concerns of pregnancy too, we'd like to do a pelvic exam for you, and just check on that too, check a pregnancy test. We can check a couple of things here too. With assaults sometimes too, especially sexual assaults, there can be question of sort of STIs that may be involved too. So we can also test for that if you'd like, just to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
So we can do that test as well. And I think we can kind of go from there.
Okay.
And then can you tell us how you would document this in the patient's chart? Just tell us verbally what you would write in the patient's chart.
So, like as an HBI, Rashid is a 51-year-old transgender male who presents the ED after a sexual assault with chief complaint of headache and genital pain. I mean, that's essentially the first line.
Alright. Cool. So the way that we do the debriefing here, especially with a live simulated patient, is first I'm going to let Rashad tell you what that felt like for him as the patient, and then we're going to kind of go through, talk about any clinical stuff or any recommendations that we had, and then answer any questions that you have. So if you want to start.
I am so forgetful, but like there was two things where I was just like, I was so happy inside. I think I smiled a little bit, and I was like, oh yeah, there was two. What was it? You said, ooh. I wish I could remember this. You said.
I can jump in with the ones that I wrote down, and then if it triggers anything for you, interrupt me. So you had asked the patient, what are your main concerns? So rather than go through this whole prescriptive thing, I like that you first put it in his hands of what's important to you in this moment. And then you had acknowledged, like, we can talk to the police if we want, but I also understand that may not be fruitful. So both of those things I thought were really good because you're establishing that rapport and making sure that everything is the patient's choice. Does that help anything?
No.
Okay.
I thought it was good. I thought you did a really good apology for the initial screw up of the misgendering him. Because you brought it up later and you were like, I'm sorry, again, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I try not to belabor that point as you told us earlier today, so apologize and move on to the rest of the interview.
Overall, how did you feel about the way that they handled it, like specifics aside?
Well, just know there was two things that you did beautiful that I cannot remember. And I also liked when there we go, one of them. When you asked my I think you used the word anatomy. I love that because we were just talking to the last group and we was trying to figure out a way to, ask, but you did it perfectly. Yeah.
I think he said groin too, as opposed to saying like genitals or anything specific, which is very neutral.
Yeah. And it was, I will say though, it was kind of weird. So when y'all came in, you started talking, and then she was standing there, and I was just like...
I didn't introduce the team, maybe?
Yeah. I was just like,
yeah.
I'm just standing right there. She, I don't know what's happening here.
Sure.
Yeah. So acknowledging everybody in the room is, that makes sense. Okay. It's okay to just ask somebody what pronouns you use and how do you identify. You seem to stumble over that a little bit, like you didn't know how to ask it. And I think a lot of times we get really wrapped up in, I don't want to say it wrong, I don't want to offend the person, I don't want to hurt the person. But just figuring out really simple ways to ask those questions is really important. So even just saying, can you tell me what your pronouns are? I can put your gender identity in the chart. What, would you like me to put that in there? That's totally fine to ask. And I could tell you were trying to figure out what the correct words were while you were doing that, but you almost did too much work of trying to do that. But
I mean, yeah, I think as soon as I figured out you'd like to be called Rashad, then I was just kind of sticking with that and didn't want to ask the pronouns on top of that. So I was like, okay, Rashad, let's just stick with Rashad. But
yeah,
maybe you would have felt weird if I kept calling you that over and over. I don't know, but.
Are you cool
I think it's still important to ask the pronouns because, even though, it's Rashad, his pronouns are he, him, but it could be they, them, it could be something. Yeah. So I still think that's an important question.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When you're asking about the anatomy, could you say instead, have you had any surgeries on your chest or groin? And if they say no, then you could presume that they have the anatomy that they're born with.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and that's another thing.
Go for it.
When I said I still have the and this is a question, I still have the parts that I was born with. Like, is it like a medical thing for to list them all or something like that? Like
for you to list them or for them to list them?
For them to ask me so you still have your.
I guess I kind of went. I kind of assumed I was born because would be a trans man in this situation too. So assuming you were a female before and then you had the normal female anatomy, but you could have not been born with female anatomy, and you just said I have what I was born with. So I guess it could have.
This is true because there's intersex.
Oh yeah, because then
you're
assuming
that
they were
Turner
born.
syndrome and had streak ovaries or something. Yeah.
But I guess
then you're probably not pregnant if you don't have fully developed ovaries.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. Okay. I would ask, have you had surgery? So that's a good lead into it. You can ask, what sex were you assigned at birth? I would try and stay away from things like female organs, normal female anatomy, or born as a female, because all of those things can be very dysphoric for somebody. Which I know is really hard because in medicine we're taught male, female, very, very binary. But I think just asking the person, what else was I going to say? Have you had surgery or
what surgeries have you had?
Do you mind telling me what body parts you mean when you say you have what we were born with? Because again, that's going to be uncomfortable, but in this situation, it would be relevant to know if that person was intersex. Any other recommendations as to how to say that?
I was going to say something
It's okay.
Shoot, I thought I had a real head injury. No, that's just enough sleep. What did you say before?
Just now.
Yeah.
About how to ask somebody what body parts they have.
No, what you said was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, cool. Good.
All right. So we'll go with that. The other thing I like to bring up is you want to offer something like Plan B, post-exposure prophylaxis, and you did offer STI testing, which was great. But those other two things, especially in this case, would be important.
So quick medical interlude, if I can.
Yeah.
One thing, and this is more AGH specific because I'm sure at other institutions they call it different things, but you always want to offer a SANE nurse examination and explain what that means because our SANE nurses are highly trained in dealing with sexual assault in both the cis and transgender population. So just to offer them that exam, and you don't have to do too much explaining because the SANE nurses will do a lot of the explaining. But also a question I had for you, Charlie, is so you offered, or you said we'll get some STD testing done. We actually normally do not STD test for sexual assault. We offer prophylactic treatment because if they were to come up positive for any STD, and they came in the next day, their positive result is actually from before
Right.
that
makes
assault.
sense.
And so if they take that information to the police, not that we're like assuming that like the police or a jury is going to use that against them, but we actually at AGH generally prefer to not order it, because then that way, you know, if they do end up taking it to the police, they're able to say, you know, we were treated prophylactically for STDs in the ED, and then some defense attorney or something isn't saying, oh, well, did you see that their gonorrhea was
Okay.
positive, so maybe they're just promiscuous, you know,
That's a
or
good
something
point.
like
Okay.
that. So we
That's a
try
really
to
good
avoid STI testing with the sexual assault.
That
Is that
makes a lot of
something?
sense.
Is that something that we should continue to do? Because it's always up in the air. We always
Yeah.
have a big discussion, multiple big discussions about it. But I think
Wait, so
makes sense.
you're treating instead of testing?
yes.
Yeah, that sounds good better to me.
Careful,
Anyway.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought it took a little while for something to turn positive anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
Like
right,
a
and
week or two or something.
well, that's
like
what
that.
we're saying.
Yeah.
So if we test them for all of these STIs and they come back positive, that means that they had that before that
yeah.
assault,
Right.
and then that could potentially be used against them by a judgmental
Mhm.
jury or something if they were to take this to the police. So we
Yeah.
prefer to just treat them.
It's the same reason you wouldn't do a pregnancy test. You're just doing like Plan B.
Well,
So
I still would maybe do a pregnancy test, but you're right. So if they were pregnant from that assault
Yeah.
from the night
that
previously, it wouldn't be positive from that. But if they're still concerned for pregnancy for other reasons,
okay.
you know, and they wanna know that answer so they can talk about their options, I still would probably do that.
Okay.
You're talking about like if they were pregnant before and
Right.
maybe now there was
Wait,
risk
how
of
long does it take
antibiotics
to
they're
get
taking, or they were
Right.
STI or something.
Right,
They start
yeah.
to be positive.
Okay.
Wait,
So
what?
because-
6 to 12 days for it to be
Ah,
positive.
Yeah,
So-
because too, and I mean this just gets into like, you know, everything's such a spectrum and people have different preferences, but if someone, let's say, is pregnant and they want to keep that baby, Bobby made a good point that some of the antibiotics we may use different ones to
Okay.
prophylactically treat for
Gotcha.
the STDs to make it safe for the pregnancy versus if they're like, oh no, like I didn't know I was pregnant and I want to, you know, discuss options for terminating the pregnancy,
Mhm.
then it really doesn't matter, the antibiotics, but
That makes sense.
yeah, medically
Okay.
things just get complicated.
And I mean, we're the experts in trans stuff. We're not the experts in necessarily emergency medicine. So this is a good discussion
Well, yeah,
to
this
have.
is like a good,
Yeah.
a good coming together.
And what is those nurses called? That
SANE, SANE,
That's a-
sexual
Mhm.
assault
Nurse
nurse
examiner.
examiner.
Are they? My understanding was they were more for like evidence collection. Is that inaccurate?
They are more for evidence collection. It's more if the patient wants to have it, but I think the like scenario we ran through previously, Jared did a really good job like offering it, because basically even though Rashad said he didn't want to go to the police, Jared was like, you know, hey, if we have this available to you to have this examination performed, we don't have to do anything with this information, but I just want you to know it's available to you. That way, if, you know, going forward you change your mind, we have this information. And so we just have to make sure to offer that.
Really good.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any other questions that came up, or any other comments, or? All right. Great job. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.